Hey, what's going on everyone? Greg here, and in our previous video we covered on how Jony Ive is leaving Apple to start his own design consulting company called Love From. Now, this is a pretty big hit for Apple considering that Jony Ive has been there for almost 30 years and he is an amazingly talented designer. However, we are now seeing rampant behind the scenes articles stating things like Jony Ive grew frustrated inside a more operations focused company led by Tim Cook. And most of these articles and reports come away with the takeaway that Apple is becoming a company that's less focused on design, with reports going as far as Tim Cook doesn't even know the design of the products he's about to announce. And with a heavy heart, I hate to say it, but this time for real, Apple is doomed. Again, for real. Wait a minute, we're really going with the Apple is doomed take again? I mean, after Steve Jobs passed away, maybe it was expected. He was the founder of the company and he came back and saved it. But after years and years and years of financial success under Tim Cook, we're really running with the Apple is doomed narrative again? Well, I don't really believe that, and I have a couple of issues with these reports that I would like to address in this video. So let's break this down. A lot of these reports seem to indicate that Jony Ive, after the development of the original Apple Watch, felt very burnt out at the company. He had taken on other projects like making Apple's campus, but he really never got back to his daily duties as being Apple's head of design. According to the Wall Street Journal, Jony Ive withdrew from routine management of Apple's elite design team, leaving it rudderless, increasingly inefficient, and ultimately weakened by a string of departures. And these reports, according to people inside of Apple, seem to indicate that Jony Ive hasn't really worked on any of the products since the original Apple Watch, which launched in 2015. And that may be true. Jony Ive may have been a little bit burnt out after the Apple Watch. We know he was working on the campus and maybe he really didn't have time to oversee the team. But I have to look at that second claim that Apple's design has gone downhill since 2015. And I don't really think that's the case. First of all, we have products like the iPhone X, which were controversial when they were introduced in terms of the design, especially with the notch. But as we've seen over these couple of years now, the iPhone X design is a pretty good design. A lot of the initial complaints from people out there have kind of faded away, and a lot of people have learned to embrace the notch, especially after 2018 with all of those Android copycats going after the same design of Apple's iPhone X style and even stealing that controversial notch design. And I'm pretty sure if you went up to someone and asked them, would they want an older designed iPhone style like the iPhone 8, which has almost all the same features as the iPhone X, or would you want that newly designed iPhone X that apparently wasn't developed by Jony Ive? I think most people would go for the iPhone X. Moving on from the iPhone X, we also had products like Apple AirPods. Again, another controversial design when they came out. People originally didn't like the design. People said they looked ridiculous, but I'd also like to point out that people have said that about previous Jony Ive designs. But again, we are saying that Jony Ive had no involvement with Apple's AirPods, and they have been a huge success after release. They are Apple's second best-selling product ever, and now everywhere you go, you see AirPods in people's ears, and I think the brilliance of AirPods design is that they are the Apple earbuds just without the wire. And like it or not, AirPods have become a fashion statement with just how popular they are. Moving away from some of the more controversial designs in the past few years from Apple, we also have products that were really well reviewed for their design when they came out. When the first Apple Watch came out, there were mixed reviews on the design of the watch. A lot of people were expecting Apple to go with a more circular watch face, but people kind of pegged it as just another square smartwatch when it was launched. However, with the release of the Apple Watch Series 4, that definitely got praised in the design department. The watch was overall slimmer, and it featured a really nice screen that almost took up the full front face of the watch. I personally love the design of the Apple Watch Series 4, and in hindsight, I think it was a really nice step up from the old Series 0, Series 1, and Series 3. Another product we have to look at is the 2018 iPad Pro, and again, that was a product that when it initially came out was immediately praised for the new design. People love the reduced bezels and the throwback to the more squared off design of the iPhone 5. Now I'm going to leave out the Mac Pro here because again, this is another controversial design and people say it looks like a cheese grater, but I think once people get it into their homes, or I guess people aren't really going to be bringing them into their homes, more like their office, people are probably going to appreciate the design. I hear it is really striking in person and that you really can't judge it from photos. But again, let's get back to my main takeaway, and that is that these reports say that Apple design is going downhill, that Jony Ive wasn't involved with any of these products. So if we are to take it as true that Jony Ive didn't have any input on these products, but they are well designed, that would indicate that Apple design isn't going downhill, it's only been improving. For me, this is why these articles are so hard to take. Are we to believe that Jony Ive had zero involvement with these new products, but the design of these new products are still really good? Or are we to believe that Jony Ive did still have involvement with it, but that would throw the whole reasoning of these articles into questioning because they say that Jony Ive was basically checked out at Apple? Because if he isn't working on the products, they're still doing a good job. And then if you're saying, well, wait a minute, he did have input on these products, then your whole articles are coming into question. Another narrative being pushed is that Tim Cook doesn't care about the design process at Apple. Love him or hate him, it would require us to believe that Tim Cook is dumber than your average internet commenter who can clearly see that Apple was saved by making great products and a part of the experience of those products was in the design. Are we really to believe that Tim Cook doesn't know that one of the reasons that Apple products sell is how they're designed? Tim Cook even recently responded to these reports. The story is absurd, Cook said in an email. A lot of the reporting and certainly the conclusions just don't match with reality. At a base level, it shows a lack of understanding about how the design team works and how Apple works. It distorts relationships, decisions, and events to the point that we just don't recognize the company it claims to describe. And that's how I feel. It is absurd to think that Tim Cook doesn't care about the design process at all. Now, what the correct narrative might be is that Tim isn't as involved with the product design as Steve Jobs was. Steve Jobs was obviously really interested in product design, and him and Jony Ive were co-conspirators in all of Apple's product designs. Steve and Jony would often meet one-on-one and argue about these designs endlessly. Tim Cook isn't Steve Jobs, but that's exactly the advice Jobs gave him before taking over the CEO role, with him basically saying, don't think about what I would do, just do what's right. And this narrative that Tim Cook is just some bumbling CEO that doesn't have any hit products under his belt is just a total fabrication. Products like Apple's AirPods are Apple's second fastest selling product ever. Faster selling than either the iPhone or the iPod. And products like the Apple Watch sell really well and are continuing to grow around 50% year over year, and that is still a product that is tied down because it can only be used by iPhone users. Imagine if Apple, with the Series 5 Apple Watch, releases an Apple Watch that is independent of the iPhone. Imagine how much sales would explode if the Apple Watch didn't require an expensive iPhone to purchase. But based on these articles, you wouldn't really know these success stories because the narrative of Apple is doomed gets clicks, people will click on it, and maybe you even clicked on this video expecting a negative Apple video. To sum it up, Jony Ive is leaving Apple, and is this a huge loss for Apple? I think it is because Jony Ive was a great product designer. However, a lot of people could also see this in a positive light, because if Jony Ive wasn't as involved with the company, if he was kind of just coasting and skating along, he might have been a hindrance to the overall product design. I think the real story, and I may not be 100% correct, but I really think it comes down to some sort of burnout. Here is a man who had an almost 30-year career at Apple designing some of the best technology products out there, and he is 52 years old. He is ready to do something else with his life. He would probably like to design other things besides computers. So this whole narrative of Apple's design team not knowing what they're doing, I would also like to go back to Tim Cook's response. As Jony has said, the design team is stronger than ever, and I have complete confidence that they will thrive under Jeff, Evans, and Alan's leadership. We know the truth and we know the incredible things they're capable of doing. The projects they're working on will blow you away. And that's kind of just it. I don't believe in the Apple is doomed narrative, but I do think that these designers do have a lot to prove with Jony Ive leaving, and with giant products potentially coming out as soon as 2020, like Apple's AR glasses. We are just going to have to wait and see what these designers come up with, and if these products will truly blow us away. But anyway, that's just what I think. Please let me know what you think in the comments below about this whole Jony Ive situation and this whole Apple is doomed narrative. If you like the channel, make sure you give me a like. If you want to see more from my channel, make sure you're subscribed. And as always, I will see you all in the next video. Take care, everyone.